The Philadelphia Phillies have a massive decision to make at the tail end of the season regarding Kyle Schwarber. The reigning National League All-Star Game MVP and foundational member of this Phillies franchise is set to be a free agent, and the Phillies have allowed it to get to this point. And for the first time in this entire process here, I've heard some quotes that have not exactly made me encouraged that Kyle Schwarber will be back in Philadelphia. I'm going to dive into exactly why I'm a little bit concerned for the first time on what his outlook would be, why it's so important for him to remain in Philadelphia, and why I'm confused why there is a holdup in the first place here. Now let's dive right into the story today. I do want to start off with this report here. This coming from Alex Kyle tweeting out the quote here. This initially coming from a report from Scott Lauber, and he tweets, Phillies Kyle Schwarber on playing for his hometown Reds if he doesn't return to Philly, per Scott Lauber. And he says, quote, being a baseball fan and growing up and watching Cincinnati baseball for your whole youth, that's how you fall in love with baseball. I think it would draw your attention, right? Schwarber said, per Lauber. Being able to play for your childhood team is something that I think it'd be awesome. Not exactly what you want to hear from a Philadelphia Phillies perspective. Now, my immediate reaction to this is I think Kyle Schwarber, we're past the point where Schwarber is a potential hometown discount guy. This is going to be a dude that is one of the premier free agents in all of Major League Baseball. He's been that good this season, and to give up his raw stats for just how good that he has been here, let me slide it over to Kyle Schwarber here, that he's got 30 home runs, 69 RBIs across his 352 at-bats, has 87 hits there, has struck out 112, 32 years old, fifth in the MLB in home runs, and a guy that seems to come through in a timely manner every time it is asked from him. That was put on full display across All-Star Weekend with him delivering in the swing off of the All-Star Game, hitting all 3 home runs following, and guess what? The rest of the Major League world was very cognizant of that as well. Now, as far as the Schwarber team first approach, I did want to pull up this quote here that I think really encapsulates a bit of what his mindset is, because for years we've heard the fights of where should Kyle Schwarber bat in the lineup? This dude can't be a leadoff hitter. All the complaints that come flying in, and Schwarber was asked a bit about his preference here. So to pull up that quote exactly, the article writes, for Schwarber, it doesn't matter where he hits. Quote, to be honest with you, I don't care, he said. I just want to be playing. I've done it all. There was a year where I hit 1 through 9 in the order. I just want to be playing, and at the end of the day, it's about winning. Whatever the manager thinks is the best lineup for the game that day, that's what I'm going to do. Lead off, clean up, it doesn't matter to his approach. Quote, it's the same. It's more situational. The situation dictates it. That's the way I like to view it, Schwarber said. Like, say, 2 quick outs for the guy pitching, then you might take that first pitch. We might try and work the count a little bit longer. Guy on third base, infield's back. I'm trying to make contact early and not being too selective in trying to hit. Things like that. The game situation dictates what I'm trying to do. And do love this quote for a variety of reasons. For starters, you get a little peek into the window of the baseball IQ and savvy that he does possess here. There does feel like Kyle Schwarber, there is a winning brand of baseball that he plays that I think is completely correlated to some of the success that this Phillies franchise has had since he got here. The 4-year contract that he initially signed looked like one of the better bargains across Major League Baseball, and that is all the more reason why I think Schwarber is set to maximize on this specific market this offseason here. I do think all things equal that Schwarber would prefer to return to the Phillies here, but it is up to him that he is now in the driver's seat because the Phillies allowed it to get to this point. And I did think it was interesting following that initial report that I did read the quotes here that Alex Kyle, who tweeted it, had some interesting thoughts. So a comment back to him said, yeah, not good. Other writers like Jim Salisbury have talked about this up-and-coming team right on the cusp. Alex, do you think the Phillies screwed around too much with this? And he replies, Dave said before that he'd be okay with letting the 33-year-old hit the market because he's a DH who, quote, usually don't cost much. He likely would match an offer, although Kyle keeps getting better and will gain a ton more interest. A team like Boston could offer a pretty penny after parting ways with Raffy, and that is another team that I think makes sense for Kyle Schwarber potentially, and I think that's where I arrive on the conclusion that is concerning here, is there's a lot of teams that make sense for Kyle Schwarber. You drop him on just about any baseball team, and he makes them better. That's what kind of special hitter he is. That's what kind of impact player and personality he is within the walls of the locker room. You won't find a teammate, a coach, a manager, a general manager to say a bad word about Kyle Schwarber. He's a dude who gets it from the community standpoint, from the PR standpoint, what he gives to the media there, and of course on the field backing up all these things as a leader and in the box score there. So Kyle Schwarber is that type of dude, and every MLB organization is going to be taking note of this here. Now, I did also want to pull up a little bit of I think some people are reading into this a bit more than I think probably should be the case, but a lot breaking into his questions about the home run derby. And to break into exactly what that is here, that the quote starts out, says, thanks in large to his 27 home runs, the fifth most in baseball, Kyle Schwarber is an all-star for the third time in his career, but he won't be participating in the home run derby. Following Sunday's win over the Cincinnati Reds, Schwarber gave on Pattison a short but compelling answer when asked if he plans to participate in the home run derby since he'll already be in Atlanta for the All-Star game. Quote, no, I'm not going to do the home run derby, Schwarber announced. Maybe see what happens next year. And to give the context of this, whether he'd still be a Philly or not at that time is unclear. Schwarber is playing out the final season of a 4-year, $79 million contract. President of Baseball Operations Dave Dombrowski has insisted on multiple occasions that the Phillies are hopeful to retain Schwarber beyond 2025. But he's likely to command a $100 million contract, and if Schwarber reaches the open market, he surely would have other teams bidding against the Phillies for his services. The question may not be whether Schwarber is playing well enough in 2026 to be invited to compete in the home run derby at Citizens Bank Park, but if he's wearing a Phillies uniform when said request takes place. So a bit of a guarded answer. Again, I don't think I read into it as much of that as like when reading that article and on Pattison as a whole, it did feel like they were kind of playing this up to be a message to the Phillies front office. I'm not sure if that's how I necessarily took it, and even watching the video clip certainly did that feel that way either. But boy, would it be sick to see Kyle Schwarber absolutely winning a home run derby in Citizens Bank Park next year, which, for my money's worth, he can 100% do. That there are very few players who possess that level of power. The craziest thing about Kyle Schwarber at the plate to me is the home runs that he hits where it looks like he's barely swinging. Like he'll almost like check a swing or half swing one, and it'll still go 400 feet over the fence in a way that just does not make sense to me. And for a Phillies team, that power has increasingly grown in the level of concern. That initially, this roster was so constructed on mashing home runs, putting up these crooked numbers on the board, dominating teams with their offense. That is not the current blueprint that we see for this Phillies pathway to success here. That they've relied on their pitching at such a high rate. They have struggled to come through with these big hits. If anything, they're playing more small ball than ever before. And while all these factors matter, having that kind of balance with Kyle Schwarber is essential to everything that they continue to do. He is one of the few on this roster that we can look at from start to finish this season, have to be thrilled with the level of performance that he's put on the field, and I don't believe that he is going to be slowing down anytime soon. So obviously a very important second half of the season coming up, not just for Kyle Schwarber from an individual standpoint, but with this Phillies team. This team is in the mix, and the best way to earn your long-term best earnings for Kyle is to continue delivering here. I do think when push comes to shove, Dave Dombrowski likely will step up and pay whatever that number is, but it's a risk you take when you allow guys to set that market with it because they don't have the direct commitment that they need to come back to you. In theory, and I do believe that these sides are in good standing, if Kyle wants to stay in Philadelphia, I think that will ultimately happen. But there might be a wandering eye on both sides of the fence here, and I do think that this quote is all the evidence that we do need to see from that. If Cincinnati's throwing a pretty penny, if Boston's throwing a pretty penny, if the Dodgers or the Mets go out and pay Schwarber, that is going to hurt from a Philadelphia Phillies perspective, and there are very few guys looking around the league that can remotely replace that level of home run production that we've gotten in a year in and year out standpoint across his 4 seasons in Philly. So I do hope cooler heads prevail and that there is a conclusion, a long-term agreement made between Kyle Schwarber and the Philadelphia Phillies. It would be a monstrous mistake to allow him to walk out of this franchise, but for the time being, all we can do is wait. Do want to hear from you guys in the comments if your level of concern has increased for the Kyle Schwarber situation. It does feel like there is some steam starting to pick up with it, and I expect that to continue over the second half of the season. So we're going to stay tapped into that here on Phillies Digest. We're buckled up for the home stretch of the season and for Red October to be coming around again. So we want as many of you as possible along for the ride. So if you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button here on Phillies Digest. Only 23.8% of you guys watching these videos have subscribed thus far. Let's get those numbers growing. Let's get this Phillies Digest family continuing to grow and want as many of you a part of it as possible. So make sure you're hitting that button. Drop a like on this video here. Drop in your thoughts below, and I'll be back to talk with you next time. Peace.